Hello friends, welcome back to the bench. Thank you very much for joining me. Our patient is AK42B and this is the replacement to clone it to. But again, before we clone the original into the replacement, we're just gonna fix the original. We don't know what the problems are, but based on what I see, it's either misfires, or maybe there is, hang on. Nope, it's just a printout of the eBay order. So, that's fine. But it's either misfires, RPM gauge issues, or both. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna quickly fix it, then we're gonna quickly clone it, and then we're gonna be done. This is most likely an old news to you guys, but the final report of Titan Submersible has been, the report has been finalized, so final report has been released. There's not much new stuff, it just has been, everything has been aggregated and, finalized, right? But no new data, no new information as far as I know. Maybe a little bit more contextual information, a little more contextual knowledge, but pretty much everything in that report we've had already at this point in one way or the other. Now, in case you don't know what the whole case is about, that happened quite a while ago, and I was going to make a video on that, like a dedicated video. Because at the end of the day, we had innocent people perish at the bottom of the sea and engineering disaster. But on the same day was it on the same day or the next day when Titan, they lost communication with Titan, a boat with like mainly migrants and stuff has capsized, and like, I don't remember, was it like 600 people died or something like that? And there was no news coverage on that. The only coverage that I've heard was from the independent YouTube channels that just kind of cover the marine disasters and shipping and all that stuff. It's a whole genre on YouTube. Very interesting stuff, because marine engineering is very, very interesting to me, and it's one of the oldest engineering professions that we have, and all of that actually started with Archimedes, right, defining the law of buoyancy. This will be my next school project for my son. Last project I made this big bridge, and how different, how stronger the bridge is with supports in truss configuration, truss prot configuration. So those beams going, like little squares with the little beam inside across, right? So the buoyancy will be my next subject, and the interesting part of it is that, everything seems easy once you know the answer, right? But at some point, actually the story goes, there are actually two stories. We don't know whether either one of those is true, but one that I learned when I was a kid was that Archimedes was tasked with determining whether the gifted crown is pure gold, or has there been added like lead or something else, right? And he couldn't figure it out, despite spending a long time thinking about it, and finally his wife told him to stop thinking about it and go take a bath, because he stinks. He went to the bath, he submerged his body in the bath, and had the eureka moment. And in my classroom for physics in my primary school, where I attended, we had a little picture. Well, it was painted on the wall, actually, a big wall painting, like a fresque, right? Painted on the wall, Archimedes in the bath, and a big eureka on top of it, right? The other, uh, probably more probable story is that he was tasked with creating a big ship that would carry, like, the biggest ever built, right? And if you want to take such an endeavor to build something like that, you have to use some kind of law that didn't exist back then yet, because you're going to be using dimensions that no one has ever used before, and you have to carry a weight that has never been carried but by any ship before. So you can't use any, existing analogy, right? Like the take some ship that can carry, say, 2 tons of cargo without sinking, and you measure its size, and so then you're gonna extrapolate from that. Now you were tasked with creating a new ship that has never been designed before, has never existed before, and you have to figure out how to actually do it. So, and it's not like you can, build a ship and let it sink, and then build another one a little bigger, and work in iterations like that. Because I imagine building a ship like that in those times, it would take years. So what he had to do was basically determine what makes the ship buoyant and what makes the ship sink. And the law is very simple. The ship needs to push out the water, the weight of the water that is greater than the cargo it holds. As long as that happens, the ship will float. If, on the other hand, the water that it displaces is lighter than the cargo, or lighter than the whole weight of the whole ship, then the ship is going to sink. So very simple, right? It's kind of intuitive to us right now, or at least I feel like it's pretty intuitive, but that's what had to be figured out by someone. I don't know, do we have focus here? It doesn't seem like yeah, that's a little bit. Recently, I noticed that my scope just kind of loses focus, and I'm not sure if it's not because of this ring light. Could be. So anyways, marine technology has always fascinated me for that reason. So naturally, I was very much drawn to the case of Titan. I don't really have any feelings about Titanic, right? It's not something that really interests me. Yeah, I love the movie. I remember the movie when I was a kid, right? That was a long time ago. But submersibles was something that always interested me. It's probably because of the Second World War. The submarines, or, well, submersibles actually, they were not submarines, because they relied on diesel engines to generate electricity to recharge the batteries, so they could go under for just relatively short periods of time. Eventually they had to surface. Nowadays the submarines, they can stay underwater for months. So these are actual submarines. The U-boats were submersible ships. And Titan also was a submersible, but even less so, because U-boats, they were submersible ships, but they were ships, right? Titan was just a submersible vessel. It was not a ship. It couldn't travel by itself. So U-boats could, especially Type 9, and they could go across the Atlantic and unleash their torpedoes in the Bay Area, or in the, what am I saying? New York Bay. Maybe not necessarily in the bay, but in the area, right? Type 7, on the other hand, had much smaller range, and they made the most Type 7s. But they could travel long way. They just couldn't travel underwater that long. The Titan submersible, again, that was just a vessel that could be that could be submerged and go down to pretty low, to pretty high depths, right? What is that, like 4,000 meters or something like that, where the Titanic is? Something like that, I don't remember. But the main innovation of that was that it was built from carbon fiber, and obviously there was a lot of deception when it came to that carbon fiber, where it came from, and the design of the Titan, whether it was approved by anyone other than Stockton Rush. Stockton Rush just kind of strikes me as I've had bosses like that, in the past. That's why this whole story interests me, because I think we should learn from these stories, at least how to recognize, let's call it a less than perfect boss. In the world of science, it is relatively important, especially when you risk your life for the cause, right? And he appropriately called this whole endeavor a religion. I think that was a very appropriate description of his company. It was kind of like religion. You either with us or you are excluded, and we don't take criticism, that kind of stuff. Now, luckily, in my profession, no one ever died when I had bosses like that. The only thing that happened was people just lost money. Investors lost money because they wouldn't listen to me, and the boss wouldn't listen to the reason, to the data. But in case of Stockton Rush, unfortunately, the stakes were a lot higher. So, quick recap of what happened. They lost communication. They heard a bang that they didn't associate with Titan, because shortly after the bang, they received a message from the Titan, because the messages are delayed, because they're basically kind of a Morse code text messages. They take a little while to transmit because obviously the density of the water hits the sound, so it takes a couple seconds for the sound alone to get to the ship, and then you have a delay of processing, right? You have to wait for the entire transmission, right? Verify whether it's corrupted or not, and then display it, right? So because of that, they didn't really think much of it. But James Cameron knew already that they were dead. That actually, I find that more funny than anything. Because I don't know, you probably shouldn't have said that. I don't think he should have. He should have said that, because it brings nothing to the discussion. It's just like his attempt to kind of position himself as an expert, which, objectively he is. He definitely is an expert. He went much lower. Oh, you see, we lost the focus again. What is going on over here? I think it's because of the ring light. It's just sitting too tall, too high, and it's messing up with the plus and minus button. Now, there. So basically, when he was being interviewed about this, he said that, what was all this search and rescue all about, since we already knew that there was a catastrophic implosion and they were all dead. But I say, well, if you were so sure, why didn't you come out then publicly and just tell all the crews that were looking for them that, stop looking, they're dead. I said so. I'm convinced because I heard a bang and we lost communication with the Titan. But I look at it from the standpoint of procedures in the in the sea, in the ocean, right? If when things like that happen, you assume that it's a rescue operation until you have undeniable proof that the people you're looking for are deceased, right? Until you have that proof, so until you find a body or find a, like in this case, a wrecked submersible on the bottom of the ocean. So until you have that, you have to assume that they're alive and they surfaced somewhere, right? They lost communication, and we have to find them. We have to free them, right? Because there's no way to get out of that vessel from the inside, right? And how are you so convinced that they all perished? Well, we lost communication, and there was a bang. Bang could have been anything. I mean, obviously, it was what James Cameron expected, but in all fairness, this bang could have been anything, and the loss of communication was nothing really new for this vessel. So I'm not sure what exactly was the purpose of even saying that. Like, what we should have immediately after hearing the bang, we should have assumed that they're dead and just stop searching and all of that. That's how I read it, so that's why I say it was unnecessary. He didn't actually have to make that comment. It brought nothing. It's coulda, shoulda, woulda, Captain Hindsight, right? But what was the major flaw of that design? Anyone could have told you that's why so many people were just kind of removed from that company, because this was just from the very beginning, this was absolutely flawed. It was called the real-time monitoring system or something like that. Basically a whole bunch of microphones on the hull listening for crackling, and if the crackling is happening too close, those little sounds of carbon fibers actually breaking, if they happen too close to one another, right, too often, that is a sign of danger, and that's when you have to surface. Now, what's wrong with that? Obviously, again, you can say that, in hindsight it is easy to just criticize that, but this is not even hindsight. Just imagine that this hole is made out of dry spaghetti noodles, right? So every time you hear a sound, one of the noodles broke, and that noodle no longer provides a support. So if you hear crackling on every single dive, it's not like that damage is self-repaired. Like once you surface, it goes back to to its original shape, and everything's hunky-dory for the next dive. No, every dive made a little damage. And that's why on the fatal dive, they didn't experience anything unusual, right? They just said drop to weights because they were slowing down, because they were getting close to Titanic. So they were almost there. I don't remember exactly what the distance was, but they were very close. So they dropped to weights to slow down. And boom, it probably the act of dropping weights most likely had nothing to do with it. It was just the time for Titan to succumb to the injuries from all the previous dives. That is what it was, right? And that's where they met their demise. I must say, if it's probably one of the most peaceful ways to go, because they didn't know they were dying, right? It's not like you run out of air, you're trapped in the sub and you're slowly running out of air. You guys remember the accident with Kursk submarine? They had an explosion and they were stuck at the bottom, and a lot of them were alive. And I remember that unfolding as I was, well, maybe not super following that, but every media was talking about it back then, right? So I don't remember how many days it took, but obviously there was a political aspect to it. So they didn't have to die. Those sailors didn't have to die, but it just took too long to get it out, and they were pretty deep, so it wasn't easy to just get them out in either case. But they could have been saved if it wasn't for the political aspect of it. So anyways, my conclusion was that Stockton really didn't know what he was doing. He really wanted to do something that he was not allowed to do. He wanted to join NASA, be a pilot for the space shuttle or whatever. I think that was the times when the space shuttle was still flying. If not, to be an astronaut. That's what he wanted to do. But he couldn't, allegedly, because of his eyesight. And I'm suspicious about that, because we never see Stockton in any pictures wearing any kind of glasses. There's no evidence of him ever having a contact lenses. However, there is a history of him getting arrested for minor things like DUI, possession of marijuana, that kind of stuff. So nothing really serious. But for you to be an astronaut, it's not like being a president of the United States, which I think should probably be the same. But you are trusted with millions of dollars of equipment, if not more, and you are sent to the environment where you might be tested. You have to exhibit certain characteristics of your personality to be in that position, because it's very risky, right? Sometimes stuff goes wrong, right? So they don't want ex-cons or people that were, what if you were punished for DUI, right? That already shows a lack of judgment, maybe lack of self-control, something like that, right? And what if you sneak a bottle of scotch to the orbit, right, and get wasted, and something happens, and you can't really be of help because you're wasted. It's a kind of extreme example, of course, probably would never happen, but for that reason, I think they just kind of avoid people with such rap sheet, right? It's just risky. So perhaps this whole story of his eyesight was just made up, because less embarrassing than, no, I couldn't be an astronaut because I'm a felon, or I had DUIs and stuff like that. So who knows? At this point, it doesn't really matter. But that was the problem. That's why he paid with his life. And I don't know about the engineering schools in US, but in Poland, engineers have the saying that if the bridge you build collapses, you better be under it, because it's better than the alternative. So at least there's that. In case of Stockton, the bridge collapsed, but he was under it. However, there are still innocent people under that bridge that were misled into thinking that this is safe, or safe enough. Sure, it's experimental, sure, it hasn't been tested, but if they knew what we know now, they would never have agreed to go. And there were the people before them that were supposed to go on that dive. They didn't go because of that, because they talked to Stockton, and he flew in, I think that was in Australia, and he flew in on his experimental plane made out of inadequate materials for the plane construction. That's why he couldn't land on the commercial airport, because if the plane crashed, then you have a big downtime. So that's risky, right? So because of that, the guy that was supposed to go on the dive said, "Oh, no, thank you." No, thank you. If that's the decisions you make, then no, I don't trust you to take me to the depths of the ocean. And turned out that his instinct was spot on. So he dodged the bullet, you might say. But that's basically the problem of Stockton. As far as his credentials in engineering and technology and stuff, he has better credentials than I do, or had better credentials than I do. He graduated from prestigious schools and stuff. I didn't. So this wasn't the problem of that he was not given proper tools and just did what he could with the limitations he had. No, it was just hubris. It was just absolute disregard for the rules, for the maybe not even the rules, even the experts that were disagreeing, that were warning him about this, and that exactly this would happen, right? Not the submersible will just on one occasion it'll just implode, it'll just disappear. And obviously there was a financial aspect. He had to cut corners, and corners he did cut for the sake of financial well, in this case they were basically drowning in debts. They couldn't make money, even though it was $250,000 to take a seat on that sub, right? But to rent a big ship, to transport them there, then to pay for the gas and all that, the crew, the divers, all that kind of stuff. I don't remember. He did say, but I wouldn't trust him on that. But it was in the millions of dollars, right? So they had to charge $250,000 per seat and take 2 or 3 passengers, just to at least cover their costs. So it's not like they were swimming in dough, right? It wasn't as lucrative as it might seem. It's a very sad situation, because mainly I don't really feel too much empathy for Stockton, because it's kind of, he also expressed on many occasions that he's aware of the risks and is not afraid. Right? If he has to go down with the ship, he will. He kept saying that you're remembered for the rules you break, not the rules you follow. And perhaps, but I don't really see any benefit in that. I would prefer to be remembered by very few for following the rules than remembered by many for breaking the rules. But he also expressed a lot of admiration to Elon Musk, and I guess they're in that way they are kind of similar, because Musk is also working primarily on useless technology, like robots that have 2 arms and 2 legs, the most inefficient way of building robots. And you would think that's actually brilliant, because that kind of robot can do anything, right? Because it has the same capabilities as human, right, as far as movement, and then some, right? The robot can lift more, can maybe turn in the ways that we cannot, and that kind of stuff. But check out what Boston Dynamics does. They actually do amazing robots. Musk's robots, nah, that is never going to be a thing. Just like those robo-taxis. And if there was no Waymo, then maybe there would be something into that. But I worked in downtown or midtown Atlanta. When I go outside for a smoke, I see at least 2 or 3 of these Waymos whizzing by, because I'm right by the 75, 85 highway. So yeah, there's every day I see a lot of Waymo cars. Haven't seen a single robotaxi Tesla. Obviously, I see a lot of Teslas, sure, but not a single one without a guy behind the wheel. And with Waymo, sometimes I see them with people behind in the driver's seat. I'm not sure how that works exactly, and more often just people sitting in the back and the car, and oftentimes just an empty car driving by. It looks super weird. It looks it looks very unusual. It's not something that you're used to seeing. Car just without the driver. But for that reason, since we already have Waymo, there's really not that much need for Tesla robotaxis. Obviously, it's not gonna make you money, because there is also a thing called maintenance. Even if you do make some money, that money most likely will barely cover your maintenance cost. And then you have to pay tax out of it. So, So now, if you're buying that argument, it's very unlikely that you would make any money on it. It's possible you would make some, maybe, but it's kind of like with DoorDash. You can make some money on it, right? But it's not like you're gonna get rich doing it. Probably a simple job at McDonald's would bring you more money or comparable money than driving for DoorDash. And how do I know? I drove for DoorDash for, I don't know, a few weeks. I made some money, sure, but then at the end of the day, you pull up to the gas station, and the majority of that money that you made, you pour into the gas tank, and then meanwhile maybe you had a soda and a coffee and a hot dog at the gas station and all that. And once you add all those up, you basically worked for next to nothing for hours. So yeah, not that easy. But nothing is, guys. Nothing is easy in this life. And actually, the main problem that Musk is dealing with now, in my opinion, is that he just kind of burned some bridges, right? And sure, now he's doing damage control, but it doesn't quite work that way. People who lost respect for Musk because of his far right ideas and maybe a few other things, like his treatment of the working people in his factories and stuff. And you can find a lot of stuff that you can dislike Musk for. So even if he now tries to do the damage control and just kind of try to fix his public image, it's not like all the people who already decided that they sold the Tesla and then they don't want to use Tesla. It's not like they're gonna now come back to buy Tesla because Musk changed his mind on some issue that you had problem with, right? At this point, you already have a different car. And when Tesla started, they had next to no competition, pretty much no competition, right? When they first started. So that was a beautiful position to be in, sure. And they did take advantage of that, sure. They made a lot of money, of course. So, it was great for a while. But now, with the amount of competition that they have now, is staggering. It's not easy for any car company now. And, in general, the car companies they have relatively low margins, the car manufacturers. Tesla, on the other hand, since those cars were considered luxury cars, they were significantly more expensive, so they had much better margins. So that was one of the great things. And say what you want about Musk, he did manage to take that tiny company and actually turn a huge profit on it. So it's not like he's completely useless. Sure, I disagree with him on almost everything when it comes to technology. By disagree, I mean I just don't see that as a or let me put it that way. If you think that technology of putting implants in people's brains and stuff is something that we should have, and also the way it's going to work is that you can learn kung fu in a few seconds, then it's not like I disagree with him. It's just it's embarrassing to just even listen to something like that. It's something that I would expect from a drunk guy at the bar, just rambling on technology and saying stuff like that. Yeah, but not from a CEO of a reputable company. So in that way, you can call it that I disagree with Musk on some stuff. And something that President Trump and Elon Musk have in common is that in Trump's case, everything is always in 2 weeks. In Musk's case, everything's always next year, next 2 years. By 2025, everything will be done. If you consider how many promises he made since 2016, right? That's almost a decade by now, right? By 2025, he promised or predicted, it's nothing wrong with being wrong when it comes to your predictions, right? I predicted a lot of stuff that never happened. And when I predict stuff and it does happen, it doesn't really mean that I was right, because that was still a prediction, right? So it's kind of like guessing. I know some people really put emphasis on that, and they want the acknowledgement that, hey, I predicted this would happen and I was right. Well, good for you, but I don't see that as being right. I just see your prediction just came true, right? So in a way, you just guessed, and regardless of what you used to make that prediction, right? If you used a theory to make the prediction, then okay, that's what the theories are for, in scientific sense, not in the common sense, because it's a little different, which causes a lot of confusion in some subjects, like theory of evolution, and people saying, well, it's just a theory. Well, in scientific sense, theory means something a little different, or much different, than when we say in common language that's my theory, meaning it's actually my hypothesis, and it's not even that. It's just something that I'm predicting, right? Most likely based on nothing but either a hunch, a gut feeling, or something like that. So it's not a scientific process, which means if it comes true, it's not like I was right. It just, I just happened to predict something correctly. That is my take on it. So again, there's nothing wrong with such predictions, right? Like maybe you predicted that Kamala Harris would win the election. You're wrong. Or you predicted that Trump would win, right? And again, in either case, you could have been wrong just as well. But if you are an owner of a big company, that produces rockets and sends people to space, and you make a prediction that, hey, at this year we're gonna launch, or by this year we're gonna launch 10 rockets to Mars, or by this year we're gonna have self-driving cars, and so on. That's a little different, because if I predict that as a nobody, right, and I just say that, oh, by year 2025 we're gonna have phones more powerful than something, or we're gonna have, I don't know, something like that, that the artificial intelligence is gonna be capable of I don't know, passing a Turing test, which it can by now, right? It was a very simple test back then, because we were so far away from that, and that simple test was effective. And now it is not. It doesn't really give you anything anymore, because you can make a chatbot sound like a human, and you wouldn't even tell that it's the robot on the other side. So such prediction, if I make them, that's no big deal. Yeah, you can call it that was right, that was wrong, or I was just lucky. In either case, I don't take any cool points. But if I give you predictions of what technology we're gonna have, and based on those predictions, you make the purchases of my stock, so you basically give me money. Based on those predictions, I get funding from the United States government and get subsidies or whatever. That is not cool. You're not allowed to be wrong in your predictions like that, because that means you're incompetent, right? You can't be incompetent. That's not allowed. I can be incompetent when it comes to rockets. Do you know why? Because I don't work with rockets. I don't own the company that makes rockets. I don't take money from anybody to build rockets. So I can be fully incompetent when it comes to rocket science. But if you send me an ECM, I'm not allowed to be incompetent. I have to have some level of competency. Otherwise, I'm a fraud. Simple as that. The world is full of incompetent people, and it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I'm just dealing with incompetent people. It's frustrating to me, especially incompetent people with confidence. These are the most annoying people that sometimes you have to deal with. Okay, that should sit. Hi. Okay, so 2 packages going out today, at least for now. We'll see, maybe we'll receive something more today, but I'm hoping tomorrow we'll receive an ECM that has been worked on, and we had a failure. Multiple pods flew off the board, so we're gonna have to do some retracing. So that'll be fun. I probably should be charging a little more for retracing, because obviously it does take time, right? It does take a little more effort than just resoldering or replacing the chip. But the ECM is going to come without the chip and without few pods. I like it as a challenge, although it's not that challenging to me anymore. It used to be back in the day, but now it's just it's not that difficult. The longer you do stuff, the easier the stuff is. That's nothing new, right? Alright, and now just rework the pins and we are done. Look at all this light that I have over here. It's barely enough for this scope. It's absolutely crazy. I am not super happy with this. It's not like I'm unhappy with it. It's alright. It is superior to my previous one, but in one aspect that is, in my view, relatively important when it comes to the scope. like light sensitivity. And in this particular aspect, it is not the best. Time to make more flux. Maybe I'll make a batch today. Let's give it a good cleaning and we're done. I guess just one repair today, but it looks like the customer from that sent in the radio, the Yaesu ham radio, is going to send the chip alone, or the replacement chip. It's a big difference in price that I quoted. Right? It's either $60 for just replacement, or if you want me to source the chip, it's closer to $300, right? And so definitely $240 difference. So if you can source it yourself, I don't think the chip should be more than like $20, maybe $50 tops. I don't think it should be more than that, but I have no idea. So if so, then we will do the ham radio repair pretty soon. The business has slowed down a little bit this month. Last month was awesome, but this month slowed down a little bit, which is too bad. But it's not like there's nothing, like there's nothing to work on. And that gives me the ability to work a little more on my awesome product that I will be releasing a beta version or alpha or closed beta, whatever, pretty soon, probably next month. I'm very excited about it. We'll see how well it will work and how many people would like to purchase one. So we'll see. Alrighty, thank you guys if you made it this far. I do appreciate you. Hope it wasn't too boring. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you guys in the next one.